The conference room lights flickered twice before settling into their usual dim glow. Ambassador Taileyes checked his communication device again, the screen showing the same empty response it had displayed for the past 3 months. Around him, representatives from 47 different species filled the tiered seats of the Galactic Assembly chamber, their voices creating a constant buzz of anxious conversation. Taileyes belonged to the Viren, a species of tall reptilian beings whose blue scales caught the light from the massive viewing windows. Those windows showed the planet Veritas 7 spinning slowly below, its green and blue surface peaceful compared to the chaos inside the station. "They are not coming," High Coordinator Myra stated from the central podium. Her lavender skin seemed paler than usual under the harsh lights. As a Kelthian, she normally maintained perfect composure during these sessions, but today her hands trembled slightly as she gestured toward the empty human seats. "Perhaps we should send another delegation," Trade Minister Oren suggested. The stocky Daxian's orange skin flashed with bioluminescent patterns that betrayed his stress. "My homeworld's markets are collapsing without human luxury goods." Taileyes felt his stomach twist. 3 months ago, he had stood at this very podium and proposed the protective regulations. The vote had passed with overwhelming support. Nobody had expected the humans to react this way. The regulations seemed reasonable at the time. Humanity had been advancing too quickly, making too many breakthroughs, solving too many problems for other species. They were becoming indispensable, and that made the older civilizations uncomfortable. The regulations would slow human expansion, limit their influence, keep things balanced. Except the humans had not argued. They had not protested or filed complaints or demanded reconsideration. They had simply withdrawn every ambassador, recalled every diplomatic team, and gone completely silent. "We have tried 17 different channels," Myra explained to the assembly. "The humans respond to navigational queries. They answer emergency hails if lives are at immediate risk, but they refuse all diplomatic contact. Every message we send receives the same automated response. The human Commonwealth does not currently maintain diplomatic relations with the Galactic Assembly." A young Kelthian analyst named Rena stood from her seat in the lower tier. Her pale blue skin marked her as even younger than most realized. "High Coordinator, if I may present the economic data." Myra nodded, and holographic displays materialized in the center of the chamber. Charts and graphs filled the air, all of them trending downward in sharp red lines. 3 months ago, human trade vessels began refusing all cargo contracts with Assembly member species, Rena explained. They complete existing obligations but accept no new business. 47% of luxury goods markets have collapsed. Medical supplies are running critically low across 12 sectors. Advanced technology sales have dropped to zero. "They cannot sustain this," Admiral Cross interrupted. The elderly Viren military officer's gray-blue scales had faded with age, but his voice remained strong. "Humanity needs our markets as much as we need their goods." Rena pulled up another display. "Actually, Admiral, the data suggests otherwise. Human colony worlds are experiencing economic growth. They have redirected all production to their own settlements and to species outside the Assembly. Their stock markets show record stability." Taileyes closed his eyes. This was his fault. He had written the regulations. He had argued for them. He had convinced the Assembly that humanity needed to be controlled before they became too powerful to manage. "What about the Daxian medical crisis?" someone shouted from the upper tiers. Oren stood, his patterns flashing orange and red. "We lost 16,000 citizens last month to a disease outbreak. The human pharmaceutical companies developed a cure 2 years ago. We have the money to pay for it. They refuse to sell it to us." "On what grounds?" Myra asked. "They cite our government's vote in favor of the protective regulations," Oren said quietly. They state that their products are only available to species who desire unrestricted human participation in galactic affairs. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Tail Eyes sat frozen in his seat. 16,000 dead because of regulations he had written. A communication alert sounded across the entire station. Every screen in the chamber switched to show an incoming transmission. It was marked as Priority 1, originating from the Kelthian colony of Araxis 3. "This is Araxis 3 Agricultural Station," a panicked voice filled the chamber. "Our terraforming equipment has failed. Human-designed systems. We cannot repair them. 8 million citizens depend on our food production. We request immediate assistance from any available human technical teams." Myra opened a direct channel. "Araxis 3, this is High Coordinator Myra. We will locate human engineers and dispatch them immediately." "High Coordinator," Rena interrupted softly. "The nearest qualified human engineers are on the merchant vessel Genesis Wind, currently 3 days away from Araxis 3. Myra activated her communication system and broadcast on all human frequencies. "This is High Coordinator Myra of the Galactic Assembly to all human Commonwealth vessels. We have an agricultural emergency on Araxis 3. 8 million lives are at risk. Please respond." Silence filled the chamber for 30 seconds. Then a calm female voice replied. "High Coordinator, this is Captain Hayes of the Genesis Wind. We received your transmission." Relief flooded through Tail Eyes. They would help. Of course they would help. Humans always helped. "Captain Hayes, can you divert to Araxis 3? Myra asked. "Negative, High Coordinator. We are currently under contract to deliver agricultural equipment to the independent colony of New Harmony. Our schedule does not permit delays." "Captain, 8 million people will starve without those systems." There was a long pause. When Hayes spoke again, her voice remained professionally neutral. "High Coordinator, 3 months ago the Galactic Assembly voted that human involvement in member species' critical infrastructure represented an unacceptable dependency. You determined that our participation was detrimental to galactic independence. We have respected that decision. I suggest you contact your own government's engineering corps. Genesis, Wind out." The transmission ended. Tail Eyes stared at the empty holographic display where the human ship's signature had been moments before. Around him, the chamber had fallen completely silent. "They are really going to let us fail," someone whispered. Myra's face had gone pale lavender, almost white. "Analyst Rena, what are our repair options without human assistance?" Rena consulted her data tablet. The Araxis 3 systems use human quantum encryption and proprietary technology. Without human technical support, repairs would take our teams approximately 8 months. The colony has food reserves for 6 weeks. 8 million people, 6 weeks of food, 8 months to fix the problem. Tail Eyes realized with horrible clarity that the humans were not punishing them. They were simply doing exactly what the Assembly had asked them to do. They were staying out of it. The protective regulations had worked perfectly. Humanity was no longer involved in galactic affairs. And the galaxy was beginning to crumble. 6 weeks had passed since the Araxis 3 crisis began. Analyst Rena stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Assembly, her hands shaking as she prepared to present the most devastating report of her career. The chamber looked different now. Half the seats sat empty as smaller species had simply stopped sending representatives. The viewing windows that once showed peaceful stars now revealed emergency transport ships moving constantly between dying colonies and stable worlds. "The economic cascade has exceeded our worst projections," Rena began, activating the holographic display. A 3-dimensional map of known space materialized, covered in spreading red zones like a disease consuming healthy tissue. "The Viren pharmaceutical industry has completely collapsed," she continued. Human chemical compounds form the base of 82% of our medicines. We cannot synthesize them. The research was done by human scientists who are no longer sharing their work. Tail Eyes watched from his seat, looking decades older than he had 2 months ago. His blue scales had dulled to gray, and his burgundy robes hung loose on his thinning frame. The Daxian entertainment networks have gone dark. Rena gestured to another section of the map. 70% of galactic media content was created by human artists, writers, and musicians. Without new human productions, viewership has collapsed. 30 billion Daxians are experiencing their first cultural silence in 3 centuries. Trade Minister Oren sat with his head in his hands. The bioluminescent patterns on his orange skin barely flickered anymore. But the worst impact is in technology. Rena pulled up a new display showing ships, stations, and planetary infrastructure. We did not realize how much of our advancement came from human innovation. Gravitic stabilizers, quantum computers, medical scanners, agricultural automation, water purification, atmospheric processors. Humans did not just sell us these things. They invented them. High Coordinator Myra spoke from her position at the podium, her voice hollow. What are our options for replacing human technology? We have 3 choices, Rena replied. First, we attempt to reverse engineer existing human devices. Our best scientists estimate this will take between 20 and 60 years per major system. Second, we develop our own alternatives from scratch, which could take centuries. Third, we accept technological regression and return to older, less efficient methods. What about hearing human engineers directly? Admiral Cross asked. Surely individual humans would work for us if the pay was sufficient. Rena shook her head. We tried. The Daxian government offered one of their best human medical researchers a contract worth 500 million credits. She declined. Her response was brief. I prefer to work where my contributions are valued rather than regulated. The chamber fell silent. Outside the windows, another emergency transport departed, carrying evacuees from a failing colony. Professor Dane of the Daxian Academic Council stood slowly. The elderly scholar had spent 40 years studying human sociology and psychology. I warned you this would happen, he said quietly. I published 3 papers predicting this exact scenario. We know, Professor, Myra said tiredly. You do not know, Dane's voice grew stronger. You still think this is about economics or politics. It is not. This is about respect. For 2 centuries, humanity solved our problems. They cured our diseases. They designed our ships. They taught at our universities. They fought in our wars when we asked. And how did we repay them? He activated his own display, showing the text of the protective regulations. We told them they were too helpful, too innovative, too necessary. We said their success was making us dependent, so we needed to limit their influence. We took their contributions and called them a threat. Tail Eyes found his voice. We were trying to maintain balance in the galaxy if humanity became too powerful. They were already powerful, Dane interrupted. But they chose cooperation over domination. They could have hoarded their innovations. They could have built an empire. Instead, they shared freely and asked only for friendship in return. And we responded with regulations designed to diminish them. What do you suggest we do? Myra asked. I suggest you understand what you are dealing with, Dane replied. Humans are not like us. They do not conquer out of strength, but they also do not beg when disrespected. They simply walk away, and once they walk away, they do not come back. A new alert sounded. A communication from the remote station Pinnacle 7, home to 4,000 researchers and their families. This is Pinnacle 7, a desperate voice filled the chamber. Life support systems failing, human-designed environmental processors, main power offline. We have 48 hours of backup oxygen, requesting immediate assistance. Myra checked her display. The nearest repair ship capable of fixing those systems is the human vessel Bright Star, currently servicing a colony in the Outer Rim. She opened a channel. Human vessel Bright Star, this is High Coordinator Myra. We have a life support emergency at Pinnacle 7, 4,000 lives at risk. Can you assist? The response came quickly. High Coordinator, this is Captain Rodriguez of the Bright Star. We acknowledge your emergency. However, station records indicate Pinnacle 7 has a 63% VRIN population. Per our updated operational guidelines, we no longer service facilities in VRIN majority space. We suggest contacting the VRIN Engineering Corps. Captain, they will die, Myra said. Then I recommend your government send help, Rodriguez replied. We respected your assembly's decision to limit human involvement in member species infrastructure. We are continuing to respect that decision. Bright Star out. The transmission ended. In the horrible silence that followed, Talai stood. I wrote those regulations, he said. I convinced this assembly to pass them. I told you all that humanity needed to be controlled. I was wrong. I was catastrophically, unforgivably wrong. He looked around the chamber at the faces of beings from dozens of worlds, all suffering because of his mistake. They are not punishing us, he continued. They are doing exactly what we asked. We told them to stop being involved in our affairs. They listened. And now we are learning what the galaxy looks like without them. Myra closed her eyes. Analyst Renna, prepare a formal apology to the human commonwealth. Draft new legislation rescinding all protective regulations. We need to fix this. Renna looked up from her tablet, her young face showing more wisdom than it should. High Coordinator, I do not think an apology will be enough. The humans have moved on. Outside the windows, the stars burned cold and distant, indifferent to the Assembly's crisis. Below them, Veritas 7 continued its peaceful rotation, beautiful and uncaring. And somewhere in the darkness of space, human ships continued their work, serving colonies and species who had never tried to limit them. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the difference between dependence and partnership. And that lesson was costing them everything. High Coordinator Myra had never felt smaller than she did approaching Earth's orbital space. Her diplomatic shuttle moved through organized traffic lanes filled with cargo vessels, passenger transports, and construction ships, all of them human, all of them ignoring her completely. The planet below looked like something from a dream. Blue oceans caught sunlight and scattered it across white clouds. Green continents showed organized city lights even on the day side, evidence of civilization so advanced it barely needed to announce itself. Orbital stations hung in perfect geometric patterns, their gray and white hulls clean and efficient. What struck Myra most was the absence of military posturing. No weapons platforms tracked her ship. No patrol craft moved to intercept. Earth's defenses simply marked her shuttle as civilian traffic and routed her through standard commercial channels. She was the High Coordinator of the Galactic Assembly, representing 47 species and trillions of citizens. And Earth's traffic control system treated her like a tourist. The shuttle landed at a public spaceport on the edge of a coastal city. Myra had expected some kind of official reception, perhaps protesters, maybe even hostile security. Instead, a single human waited at the landing pad. High Coordinator Myra, the man approached with a polite smile. He was young, perhaps 30 in human years, with neat dark hair and a simple gray suit. I'm Daniel Park, your liaison during your visit. You are from the Diplomatic Corps? Myra asked. Not exactly, Daniel checked his data tablet. I work in the Department of Tourism and Visa Services. Your request for a meeting was routed to my office since you entered Earth space on a tourist visa. Myra felt heat rise to her lavender face. I am here on behalf of the Galactic Assembly. Yes, I saw that in your application, Daniel said cheerfully. Unfortunately, Earth does not currently recognize diplomatic credentials from the Assembly, but your tourist visa is valid for 30 days. Shall we get you to your hotel?" They traveled through the city in a ground vehicle that moved silently on magnetic rails. Myra stared out the window at impossible architecture. Buildings rose hundreds of stories, their walls covered in living gardens that cascaded down like green waterfalls. Flying vehicles moved in perfect coordination through the air. Children played in parks while adults walked to work or sat in outdoor cafes. "Your people seem unconcerned about the galactic crisis," Myra said. Daniel glanced up from his tablet. "Which crisis is that?" "The economic collapse, the failing colonies, the thousands dying from preventable causes." "Oh, that," Daniel returned to his screen. "Yeah, it was in the news for a few days last month." Most people have other things to focus on now. The new water reclamation project in the Pacific, the colony ship launching next week, the terraforming progress on New Darwin. You know, regular life. Regular life. While the galaxy burned, humans simply continued with regular life. The government complex was surprisingly modest. No grand palaces or towering monuments, just clean, functional buildings surrounded by gardens and water features. Daniel led Myra to an office on the third floor where a woman in her 50s worked at a desk by a large window. "Governor West," Daniel said, "your 3 o'clock appointment." Governor West looked up, smiled politely, and gestured to a chair. She was a dark-skinned woman with gray streaking through her black hair, wearing a simple navy blue suit. Behind her, the window showed the city stretching to the ocean. "High Coordinator Myra," West said, "thank you for visiting Earth. I understand you wanted to discuss our relationship with the Galactic Assembly." Myra sat, gathering her thoughts. This was not how diplomatic meetings worked. There should be protocols, formalities, ceremonies, not a casual office conversation. "Governor West, the galaxy is collapsing without human participation. Medical systems failing, agricultural zones dying, technology breaking down, thousands are dead, millions more are at risk." West listened with polite attention, the way one might listen to a weather report. "I am here to formally apologize on behalf of the Galactic Assembly," Myra continued. "The protective regulations were a mistake. We have drafted new legislation rescinding all restrictions on human activity. We want to restore our partnership." "I appreciate you coming all this way," West replied, "and I accept your apology, but I'm afraid our position remains unchanged. You would let civilizations fall because of wounded pride." "It's not about pride," West said gently. "High Coordinator, do you know why the Assembly passed those regulations?" The stated reason was to prevent unhealthy dependency on human innovation. The stated reason, yes. West pulled up a holographic display showing internal Assembly communications. "These are the private messages between your senior members during the debate. Should I read some of them?" Myra felt cold as West scrolled through the captured data. "Here's one from a VRIN senator. The humans are making themselves indispensable so they can demand political concessions later. And this from a Kelthian military advisor. We must limit human influence before they have leverage over Assembly decisions." Oh, and this one from a Daxian council member. "Better to suffer short-term economic pain than risk human domination." "Those were private communications," Myra said weakly. "Yes, they were," West closed the display, "and they told us the truth. The regulations weren't about dependency. They were about power. You wanted our innovations but not our influence. You wanted our help but not our voice. You wanted us as servants, not partners." "That is not fair." "Perhaps not," West agreed. "But it is accurate. For 200 years we helped build galactic civilization. We gave freely. We asked for nothing but respect and friendship. Instead, you labeled us a threat and tried to diminish us. So you will let innocent people die." "We are not letting anyone die," West said firmly. We are simply respecting your decision. You voted that human involvement in your affairs was unacceptable. We agreed. We stopped being involved. But we were wrong, we admit it. What more do you want? Wes stood and walked to the window, looking out at the thriving city below. Nothing, she said finally. High Coordinator, we don't want anything from you. That's what you don't understand. We tried being everyone's helper, everyone's innovator, everyone's solution. You told us you didn't want that. We listened. Now we help those who want to be helped. There must be something we can offer. There isn't, Wes turned back to face her. We're not angry, we're not seeking revenge, we're simply done. You wanted independence from human influence. You have it, permanently. Myra felt tears forming. You are condemning billions to suffering. No, Wes said softly. You did that when you passed the regulations. We're just respecting your choice. The galaxy you wanted is the galaxy you got. Daniel appeared in the doorway. High Coordinator, your scheduled meeting time is complete. I can show you some of Earth's tourist attractions if you'd like. The Pacific Gardens are beautiful this time of year. Myra stood on shaking legs. She had come to Earth to save the galaxy. Instead, she had learned that some doors, once closed, never opened again. Outside the window, Earth continued its day, beautiful and indifferent to the Assembly's crisis. And Myra understood that humanity had already moved on to building something new, something better, with people who valued them. The galaxy she knew was ending, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The collapse happened faster than anyone predicted. 3 weeks after Myra returned from Earth empty-handed, the galaxy descended into chaos. Analyst Rena worked 18-hour shifts now, tracking the spreading disaster from her small office aboard the assembly station. The holographic displays that surrounded her desk showed nothing but red warning indicators and declining graphs. Another VRIN colony just went dark, she reported to the Emergency Council. That makes 11 this month. Terraforming equipment failures. They are evacuating 7 million people with nowhere to send them. Ambassador Taileyes no longer attended these meetings. He had submitted his resignation, but the council refused to accept it. They needed someone to blame, and he was the perfect target. Instead, he sat alone in his quarters, watching his homeworld's news feeds report on riots and resource shortages. The Daxian situation was even worse. Trade Minister Oren had died 3 days ago, not from disease but from simple exhaustion. His heart gave out during his 14th consecutive briefing on the medical crisis. The Daxian people had lost 400,000 citizens to treatable illnesses. Human medicines could have saved them all. But humans were not selling to assembly species anymore. We have an interesting development, Rena said, pulling up new data. Human trade activity has actually increased over the past 2 months. They are moving more cargo than ever. To whom? High Coordinator Myra asked. She looked decades older, her lavender skin faded almost to white. Species outside the assembly, Rena explained. The Cryon Collective, the Yavali Federation, the independent colonies in the Outer Rim. Humans are offering them the same partnerships they once offered us. Technology transfers, medical research, educational programs, all freely given. Admiral Cross slammed his fist on the table. They are building a rival power block. This is a strategic move to undermine the assembly. I don't think so, Professor Dane said quietly. The elderly Daxian had been attending meetings since Oren's death. The humans are not being strategic. They are simply doing what they always did, but with different partners. Partners who did not try to limit them. A priority alert interrupted the meeting. Myra activated the communication channel. This is the merchant vessel Fortune's Hope, a panicked alien voice said. We were transporting critical medical supplies to Daxian Core when a Kelthian extremist group seized our ship. They are demanding we hand over our cargo and all human-designed navigation systems. They say they will execute the crew if we don't comply. Please, someone help us. Myra checked the ship's registry. Fortune's Hope was a Cryan vessel, one of the species now allied with humanity, and they were under attack by Kelthian extremists who had decided to steal what they could no longer buy. This is High Coordinator Myra to Fortune's Hope. Help is on the way. Can you identify your attackers? They call themselves the Liberation Front, the captain replied. They say the galaxy should not have to beg humans for technology. They are taking it by force. Within minutes, the crisis became a disaster. The extremists killed 3 crew members and seized the ship. They broadcast their manifesto across all channels, calling for organized seizure of human technology wherever it could be found. The human response was immediate and absolute. Every human merchant ship in Kelthian space received recall orders. Within 6 hours, 200 vessels jumped to hyperspace and vanished. Human students at Kelthian universities were given 48 hours to leave. Human research teams working on Kelthian projects packed their equipment and departed without explanation. But worse than the departures were the cancellations. Every single contract between humans and Kelthian entities, from massive infrastructure projects to small academic exchanges, terminated simultaneously. No negotiations, no exceptions, just cold, professional contract termination notices. Admiral Cross tried to intervene. He sent a personal message to every human military officer he had ever served with, begging for understanding. The responses were identical. We are sorry for your situation, Admiral, but we cannot maintain relationships with species whose governments tolerate violence against our allies. The Liberation Front quickly realized their mistake. They released Fortune's Hope and its surviving crew, surrendering to Kelthian authorities within hours. But the damage was done. The human withdrawal from Kelthian space was total and permanent. 3 days later, Admiral Cross stood in Myra's office with tears running down his gray-blue scales. "My daughter is on Research Station Apex 9, he said, his voice breaking. "Life support is failing. Human-designed systems. The nearest repair ship is the human vessel Steadfast, currently 10 hours away. I sent them a message." He played the recording. Cross, a decorated admiral who had commanded fleets and won wars, reduced to begging. "Captain Chen, this is Admiral Cross of the Virin Defense Force. My daughter is on Apex 9. She is 23 years old. She wants to be a doctor. Please, I am begging you, save her life. I will give you anything. My rank, my fortune, my honor. Please." The response came in a young woman's voice, professional and sympathetic. "Admiral Cross, we received your message. We understand this is a family emergency. However, the Virin government voted in favor of regulations specifically designed to reduce Virin dependence on human assistance. We are respecting that decision. We recommend you contact the Virin Engineering Corps for assistance. May your daughter find peace." Myra watched Cross collapse into a chair. "The Virin Engineering Corps says repairs will take 6 weeks. The station has 4 days of oxygen. We could send military ships to force the humans to help," Myra suggested weakly. "And then what?" Cross looked up, his face hollow. "They would defend themselves, we would lose, and even if we won, we cannot force them to care. We broke faith with them. This is the consequence." Professor Dane entered the office carrying a data pad. "I have been monitoring human news networks. There is an interesting story." He activated the display. A human reporter stood in front of a small settlement on a frontier world. "This is New Harmony, an independent colony established just 2 years ago by the Yavali people," the reporter explained. "Last week, their agricultural systems failed. The nearest human vessel, the Genesis Wind, immediately diverted to help. Captain Hayes and her crew spent 3 days repairing the systems, refusing all payment. The footage showed Captain Hayes, the same woman who had refused to help Araxis 3 months ago, working alongside Yavali farmers. She was smiling, teaching them how to maintain the equipment, sharing meals with their families. Why would they help these people but not us? Cross asked. Because the Yavali never told them they were too helpful, Dane replied. Because New Harmony welcomed human assistance instead of regulating it. Because relationships are built on respect, and respect works both ways. Myra turned off the display. Outside her window, another evacuation ship departed from a dying colony. The galaxy she had led was coming apart, and the humans who could have saved it were building a new one with people who appreciated them. The Assembly had voted for independence from human influence. They had gotten exactly what they asked for, and it was destroying them. The vote to rescind the protective regulations passed unanimously. Every species that remained in the Assembly agreed. They drafted a formal apology, signed by all 47 member governments. They sent it to Earth through every available channel. The human response arrived within 1 hour. The human Commonwealth acknowledges receipt of the Galactic Assembly's apology and legislative changes. We appreciate your reconsideration. However, our position regarding diplomatic and economic relations remains unchanged. We wish the Assembly species well in their future endeavors. That was it. 47 governments apologizing, and humanity responded like someone acknowledging a change of address notification. Analyst Rena sat in her office, surrounded by displays that told the real story. The story the Assembly did not want to face. While Assembly species suffered, humanity was thriving, and they were not alone. The human Commonwealth now includes 23 species, she reported to the Emergency Council. 17 have signed formal alliance treaties. 6 more are in negotiations. These species range from the barely spacefaring to the moderately advanced. What they all have in common is that they were never part of our Assembly. She pulled up images of the new alliance. The Cryon Collective, whose insected people had made first contact only 5 years ago. The Yavali Federation, a peaceful species who had been too small to warrant Assembly membership. The Torani clans, nomadic traders who had always operated at the galaxy's edge. What are the humans offering them? Myra asked. The same things they offered us, Rena replied. Medical technology, agricultural systems, educational exchanges, cultural partnerships. They are sharing freely, teaching openly, building genuine relationships. Why them and not us? Professor Dane stood slowly, his aged frame bent with exhaustion. Because they never voted to limit human success. Because they welcomed human help instead of fearing human influence. Because they understand that partnership means mutual respect, not managed dependency. The council chamber fell silent. Through the viewing windows, the Assembly station looked smaller somehow, less significant against the vast cosmos. Then Rena pulled up something that made everyone freeze. I intercepted this yesterday, she said. Human News interview with Dr. Yuki Sato, one of their leading scientists. The hologram showed a middle-aged Japanese woman sitting in a comfortable studio. The interviewer, also human, asked her about the Assembly situation. Dr. Sato, many people wonder why humanity will not help the Assembly species despite their apology. Can you explain? Sato smiled sadly. It is not about the apology. Apologies are words. What matters is understanding. For 2 centuries, we helped build galactic civilization. We solved problems not because we wanted power, but because solving problems is what humans do. We are builders, helpers, fixers. It is part of our nature. But the Assembly feared that nature. They feared what it meant for their power structure, Sato replied. They were comfortable with us doing the hard work while they maintained political control. When we became too successful, too necessary, they tried to limit us. Not because we had done anything wrong, but because our success made them feel diminished. So humanity is punishing them. No, Sato said firmly. We are not punishing anyone. We are simply choosing where to invest our finite time and energy. The assembly taught us that our help was unwanted, so we found others who do want it. The Cryan people asked us to help with their medical crisis. We did. The Yavali needed agricultural technology. We shared it. The Torani wanted to learn about quantum engineering. We taught them. These species do not see our success as a threat. They see it as an opportunity for partnership. The interviewer leaned forward, but millions in assembly space are suffering. Yes, Sato's face showed genuine sadness. And that is tragic, but it is not our responsibility to save people who voted to exclude us from their lives. We tried that for 200 years. They told us to stop. We listened. Now we are building something better with people who value mutual respect over hierarchy. The interview ended. In the council chamber, no one spoke. Finally, Ambassador Taylise entered. He had not attended a meeting in weeks, but now he walked to the center of the room and stood before them all. "I have been monitoring the Commonwealth news and communications," he said quietly. "I wanted to understand what we lost, so I analyzed their public broadcasts, their cultural exchanges, their scientific publications." He activated a display showing the vibrant new civilization growing at the galaxy's edge. "This is what we could have had," Taylise continued. "A true partnership of equals. The humans in the Commonwealth are sharing everything freely. Not selling, sharing. They are teaching species how to advance their own technology. They are conducting joint research where all partners receive equal credit. They are building ships designed by mixed species teams." "Why are they doing this now when they wouldn't for us?" Admiral Cross asked. "Because these species asked for help instead of demanding it," Taylise replied. "Because they offered friendship instead of regulations. Because they treated humans as partners instead of servants." He pulled up internal assembly communications from 2 years ago, before the protective regulations. "Look at how we talked about them. Human innovation is threatening our traditional industries. Human success is making our people feel inadequate. We must limit their influence before they have leverage over us. We never saw them as partners. We saw them as a resource to be managed." High Coordinator Myra buried her face in her hands. "We were so afraid of becoming dependent that we destroyed the relationship entirely." "Yes," Taylise agreed. "And now we see what we lost. The humans are building the galaxy we could have had. A community based on mutual respect, shared innovation, and genuine cooperation. They are doing with the Commonwealth what they wanted to do with us." Rena pulled up one final image. It showed a human cargo ship arriving at a small Yavali colony. The crew was unloading medical supplies, agricultural equipment, and educational materials. The Yavali colonists greeted them with joy and gratitude. "This is what humanity always wanted," Rena said softly. "Not power, not control, just appreciation, just respect, just friendship." "Can we offer them that now?" someone asked. "No," Professor Dane replied, "because they have found it elsewhere, with species who offered it freely from the start. We had 200 years to build that relationship. We spent that time fearing their success instead of celebrating it. Some doors, once closed, do not reopen." The council sat in silence, watching the Commonwealth grow stronger while the assembly crumbled. They had voted for independence from human influence. They had received it, and now they understood the difference between independence and isolation. Humanity had moved on. The galaxy they were building would be magnificent, but the assembly would not be part of it. That chance had passed, and everyone in that chamber knew they had no one to blame but themselves. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant, indifferent to their regret. 15 months after the silence began, the galaxy looked completely different. The Galactic Assembly still existed. The station still orbited Veritas 7. Delegates still met in the Great Chamber, but everything had changed. The Assembly now represented only 19 species. The others had either collapsed into chaos or quietly joined smaller regional alliances. The grand vision of a unified galaxy had shattered. High Coordinator Myra stood at the central podium for the last time. She was retiring, her health broken by the stress of watching civilization crumble. Her replacement would be Admiral Cross, though everyone knew the position meant little anymore. "We called this session to discuss our future," Myra said to the sparse attendants. "The reality is that we no longer shape the galaxy's direction. That role belongs to others now." She activated the main display showing the human commonwealth. 29 species now, dozens of worlds, thriving trade networks, joint research stations, mixed species colonies, cultural exchanges, everything the assembly should have been. "They are not hiding from us," Myra continued. "Commonwealth activities are completely public. We can watch their news, read their publications, see their progress. They treat us like we treat any distant civilization, politely, professionally, distantly." Ambassador Talai sat alone in what used to be a full section of Viren delegates. His government had fallen. New leadership had tried to make peace with humanity, sending envoys with unlimited negotiating authority. The humans had received them courteously, listened patiently, and sent them home with the same answer: "We wish you well, but we have moved on." "I have been studying Commonwealth educational programs," analyst Rena reported. She was one of the few young beings who had not left the assembly for better opportunities elsewhere. "They are training the next generation of scientists, engineers, and doctors in mixed-species universities. A human student might learn medicine alongside a Cryan classmate. They share knowledge freely. No species hoards advancement." "That could have been us," someone said quietly. "It was us," Professor Dane replied. "For nearly 2 centuries, humans tried to build that with us. We rejected it. Now they are building it with others." The chamber's communication system activated. An incoming transmission request from an unexpected source, a human vessel. Myra authorized it, and Captain Hayes appeared on the main display. The merchant captain who had refused to help Araxis 3 all those months ago. "High Coordinator Myra," Hayes said, "I am transmitting from the edge of former assembly space. I wanted to inform you that we are establishing a new Commonwealth colony in the Outer Rim. The colony will include humans, Cryan, Yavali, and Torani settlers. We will be developing agricultural and industrial systems in this sector." "Why are you telling us this?" Myra asked. "Professional courtesy," Hayes replied. "Some of our supply routes will pass near assembly territory. We wanted to ensure there are no navigational conflicts." She was treating the once mighty Galactic Assembly like a minor traffic authority. "Captain Hayes," Myra said carefully, "may I ask you a question, not as High Coordinator but as someone who wants to understand? Is there anything we could do to change your position? Any concession we could make? Any price we could pay?" Hayes considered for a long moment. "High Coordinator, there is no price because this is not a transaction. You cannot buy back what you gave away. 200 years ago, humanity offered you our friendship, our innovation, our partnership. You accepted the benefits but rejected the relationship. You wanted what we could give you without valuing who we were. We understand that now. We want to make it right." "I believe you do," Hayes said kindly. "But understanding what you lost does not undo the loss. We built something with the Commonwealth species, real bonds, mutual respect, shared dreams. We cannot simply replace those relationships with the ones we used to have with you. It would not be fair to our current partners." "So there is no hope for reconciliation?" "I did not say that," Hayes replied. "Perhaps in a few generations, when the wounds have healed, when new leadership emerges, when both sides have learned and grown. But that is not a decision for me to make. That will be for our children's children to consider." The transmission ended. Myra stood at the podium, feeling the weight of history. They had thrown away something precious, and there was no getting it back. 3 days later, Myra attended the inauguration of Admiral Cross as the new High Coordinator. It was a small ceremony. No grand celebration, just a few officials and some archivists recording the transition for history. After the ceremony, Myra took a shuttle to Earth one last time, not on official business, just as a tourist using her remaining visa days. She walked through the cities she had seen before, now understanding what she was seeing. This was not a civilization in isolation. It was a civilization that had chosen different partners. In the parks, human children played alongside Cryan younglings. In the universities, mixed species research teams collaborated freely. In the markets, goods from 24 worlds traded hands. Earth had not closed itself off. It had opened itself to those who valued it. In a quiet garden overlooking the ocean, Myra found a memorial. It listed the names of every human who had died while helping assembly species over the past 2 centuries. Scientists who gave their lives curing alien plagues, engineers who died fixing failing systems, teachers who devoted careers to educating other species' children. At the bottom, an inscription. They gave everything to build bridges between stars. May we honor their memory by building better ones. Myra stood there for a long time, reading names and understanding what they represented. Humanity had not abandoned the assembly out of spite or pride. They had simply taken the lesson to heart. Build bridges with those who value them. She returned to the assembly station knowing it was over. The galaxy would continue. The assembly might even survive in some reduced form, but the dream of a unified civilization was gone. Humanity had moved on to build that dream with others. Perhaps that was the real lesson. Relationships were not about power or dependency or control. They were about respect, and respect, once broken, could not be commanded back into existence. High Coordinator Cross would try to rebuild. The assembly would adapt. Life would continue. But the galaxy that could have been, the partnership that should have existed, was lost forever. Humanity had found new partners, and they were building something beautiful together. The assembly could only watch from the outside and remember what they had thrown away.